The night was cold, and everything outside felt like it had just woken up from a long, silent slumber. The moon hung low in the sky, casting pale shadows over the empty streets. The last few months had been a blur, a string of sleepless nights, long workdays, and the constant, suffocating feeling of isolation. The pandemic had taken its toll. It wasn't just the fear of being sick or the overwhelming uncertainty, but the loneliness that seemed to seep into every corner of my life. I had always been someone who preferred their own company. But after everything, after being stuck in my apartment for months on end with no end in sight, it felt like the walls were closing in. The isolation, once a comfort, now felt like a prison. I tried to distract myself with work, gaming, endless scrolling on my phone, but none of it worked. The loneliness gnawed at me, eating away at something inside that I couldn't name. I started to question whether I would ever feel normal again, whether I would ever truly feel like myself. That's when I downloaded Tinder. I wasn't expecting much. I wasn't really looking for anything serious, but I figured I could at least try. Swiping through profiles, half-heartedly reading bios, I didn't expect to connect with anyone. The idea of online dating seemed like an odd distraction, something to fill the empty hours. But then I saw her, Haley. Her profile picture caught my eye. It wasn't a glamorous, staged photo like so many others. It was a simple shot of her at a park, her blonde hair blowing slightly in the wind, a smile that looked genuine, like someone who wasn't afraid to be themselves. Her eyes were kind, and something about her smile made me feel at ease, almost like I had known her forever. I paused, staring at the screen for a moment. Her bio listed a few of our shared interests: movies, music, and books, specifically the obscure kind. It felt like she was speaking directly to me, like she understood exactly what I was into. I swiped right, not really expecting anything. But to my surprise, we matched almost immediately. The first few conversations were slow, like most conversations with strangers. There were awkward pauses, stilted sentences, and the usual getting to know you small talk. But then it started to change. We found our rhythm. Our late-night chats became easier, like we were picking up where we had left off. We talked about everything: our favorite films, childhood memories, and even the smallest things, like the way our favorite songs made us feel. Haley was funny, quick-witted, and deeply thoughtful. She made me laugh more than anyone had in months. The more we talked, the more I felt like I was reconnecting with a part of myself I had lost. The loneliness didn't feel quite so suffocating when I was talking to her. It wasn't long before we started talking about meeting up in person. I was nervous, but I couldn't deny that I was excited. I suggested a coffee shop, something low-key and casual, but she turned me down, saying she wasn't fond of crowded places. Instead, she suggested coming over to my apartment. I hesitated. Was that too forward? I had always been cautious when meeting people online, and this felt a little sudden. But there was something about Haley, something in the way she spoke, that made me feel safe. I could sense that she wasn't like the others. She seemed genuine, kind. So I agreed. The next few days were a blur of cleaning and rearranging my apartment. I wanted everything to be perfect. My mind raced as I imagined what it would be like to meet her. Would she like me? Would we get along? Or would this just be another awkward encounter that I'd have to brush off and forget? When the night arrived, I was a mess. Nervous energy ran through me. I paced around my apartment, checking and rechecking every little detail. My hands were clammy, and my stomach churned with anticipation. This could be the start of something new, something real. But what if it wasn't? When the knock came at my door, my heart skipped a beat. I opened it to find her standing there, her blonde hair flowing in soft waves down her back, her blue eyes sparkling in the dim light of my apartment. The warm glow of the lamp illuminated her face, and for a moment I couldn't speak. She was even more beautiful than in her pictures. "Hi," she said cheerfully, her voice light and welcoming. "This place is nice. It's cozy." "Thanks," I replied, my voice coming out shaky. I wasn't used to having people over. "Can I get you something to drink?" "Sure," she said with a smile. "I'll take whatever you're having." I moved aside to let her in, trying my best to keep my composure. As she stepped into my apartment, I couldn't help but feel a little nervous. This was real. She was here, in my home, about to spend the night. We settled on the couch, both of us holding our drinks, a quiet moment of awkwardness before we dived into the conversation. We talked for hours. It wasn't forced or uncomfortable like I'd feared. The conversation flowed easily, as if we were old friends catching up. She was open and honest about herself, and in return, I found myself sharing things I hadn't told anyone in a long time. It felt good to really talk to someone. With Haley, it felt like I could be myself again, without the loneliness pressing in from all sides. I forgot about the weight of the past few months. For that night, I was simply present, enjoying her company. But as the night wore on, I started to notice things that made me uneasy. It wasn't anything huge, just little things, subtle shifts in her behavior that didn't sit right. The way she laughed just a little too loudly at my jokes. The way her eyes lingered on me a little too long when we made eye contact. It wasn't that she was making me uncomfortable, but there was something about the way she behaved that made me pause. I shrugged it off. I was probably just overthinking things. She was a stranger, and it was normal to feel a little awkward in the beginning, right? As the night wore on, she suggested we have a drink. I didn't usually drink much, but she told me she had brought something special, something she had made herself. "A cocktail," she said with a grin. It seemed harmless enough, so I agreed. She handed me the glass, her fingers brushing mine for a moment. There was something almost electric about it. I took the drink without hesitation. It was sweet, fruity, and surprisingly smooth. I took a sip, feeling the warmth of the alcohol spread through me. At first, I thought it was just the drink, but as I took another sip, I started to feel strange. My vision blurred, just a little, and my limbs felt heavier than usual. It wasn't a rush, not like when you drink too much too fast, but a slow, creeping sensation. I tried to shake it off, thinking I was just tired. Maybe it was the late hour catching up with me. But the dizziness didn't stop. It worsened. I tried to focus on her, to keep the conversation going, but my thoughts were scattered. My limbs felt numb, and my heart began to race. I could hear her voice, but it felt distant, like I was underwater, hearing sounds from far away. My head spun, and I fought to stay upright, but the room around me was starting to tilt. My stomach churned, and the warmth from the drink felt like it was suffocating me. "Are you okay?" Haley's voice broke through the haze, but it sounded distant, as if coming from the other end of a long tunnel. I tried to speak, but my words came out slurred, unclear. The panic began to set in. Something was wrong. I tried to push myself up from the couch, but the room tilted again, and my vision went black. I glanced over at Haley, but she wasn't looking away from me. Her eyes were locked onto mine, sharp and unblinking. It felt like she was searching for something in me, but what? My stomach twisted with an uneasy feeling I couldn't shake. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something about it that made me feel like I was being weighed down, like I was about to fall into some deep, dark hole. A chill ran down my spine as I tried to look away, but I couldn't. I couldn't break the stare. My head felt heavy, my thoughts racing in a blur. I wasn't sure why, but something felt wrong. Maybe it was the drink, or maybe it was just the way she looked at me. My vision began to swim, and the room around me seemed to blur, like I was floating in a dream. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't hold me. Before I knew it, I collapsed back onto the couch. The room spun as the world slipped away from me. When I finally opened my eyes, I felt disoriented. My head pounded like a drum, and I had no idea how long I had been out. The room was dark, the only light coming from the dim glow of streetlights outside the window. I tried to sit up, but it felt like my body was weighed down with lead. My muscles felt weak and uncooperative, like I was trapped in a body that wasn't mine. My throat was dry, and my mouth tasted bitter. My fingers fumbled for my phone, desperate to check the time, to see if anything was wrong. But when I looked at the screen, my heart skipped a beat. The glass was cracked, badly damaged, like it had been smashed into the floor. Confusion washed over me. What happened? I could barely remember. I tried to call out, but my voice barely escaped my lips. It was weak, almost a whisper. "Haley?" I called, but the word didn't sound like it came from me. It sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. I forced myself to stand, the room still spinning around me. My vision was blurry, and I couldn't keep my balance. But as I stumbled to my feet, I froze. The apartment, it was different. Something was off. The couch was tipped over, the coffee tables smashed into pieces. The walls had stains on them, dark streaks that looked like dried blood. My chest tightened as panic set in. What had happened here? What had happened to me? My mind was racing, and I could barely keep up with my own thoughts. Where was Haley? What had happened to her? I stumbled through the apartment, my heart pounding with each step. I moved cautiously, my legs feeling like they were made of rubber. Every room I passed was in disarray. The furniture was overturned, broken glass littered the floor, and the smell in the air was thick and metallic, like blood. It made me gag. I wasn't sure what to do next, but something told me I couldn't just stay here. Not with all this mess. I couldn't just ignore it. I had to find Haley. But where was she? I made my way to the kitchen, hoping for some kind of clue, but what I saw froze me in my tracks. My stomach turned as I stared at the wall. There, painted in thick, jagged strokes, was a pentagram. The blood-red paint dripped down the wall, making it look like something straight out of a nightmare. I couldn't move. My legs almost gave out beneath me. I wasn't imagining it. It was real. The symbol was real. I stepped back, my breath shallow, my mind trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I had to find Haley. I had to find out what happened. I moved toward the hallway, my footsteps echoing loudly in the empty apartment. The silence was deafening, but there was something else too. An unsettling feeling, like I wasn't alone, like someone was watching me, hidden in the shadows. The apartment felt deserted, but it didn't feel empty. There was something in the air, something wrong. I could feel it in my bones. I walked through the hallway, checking every room as I went, but there was no sign of Haley. No phone, no clothes, no trace of her at all. It was like she had disappeared, leaving nothing behind but destruction. A cold shiver ran down my spine. How was this possible? Where was she? My mind raced with the possibilities, none of them good. I called her name again, but it was pointless. There was no answer. My stomach twisted with fear. I had to find her. I had to know what happened. I checked every corner of the apartment, the living room, the kitchen, the bedrooms. Every room was the same. Overturned furniture, broken glass, and those damn bloodstains on the walls. But no Haley. It was like she had never been here. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking as I dialed the police. I couldn't think of anything else to do. "Hello, I need help." "Something happened," I stammered when they answered. "My apartment. It's wrecked. I don't know where my friend is. There's blood on the walls." And I broke off, unable to finish the sentence. The fear in my chest felt suffocating. The dispatcher was calm, professional. She asked for my address, and I gave it to her, my voice unsteady. She told me to stay put and that help would arrive soon. The wait felt endless. It felt like hours, but it was probably only minutes before the police arrived. When they came in, I was still standing there, staring at the pentagram on the wall, trying to make sense of everything. They quickly began searching the apartment, checking the rooms, and looking for signs of anything that could explain the destruction. But there was nothing. No sign of a struggle. No blood anywhere except for the streaks on the wall. No Haley. No signs of her. They questioned me, but I didn't have much to tell them. I had no idea what had happened. I could barely remember anything. The only thing I knew for sure was that something was terribly wrong. One of the officers returned to where I was standing and gave me a strange look. "We found something in your blood," he said, his voice steady, but his eyes were hard. "A tranquilizer. A rare one. Not something you'd just come across." The words didn't make sense at first. I had been drugged. That's why I felt so out of it. But why? And by who? The officer didn't have the answers, and neither did I, but I could tell from the way he looked at me that he was puzzled. They didn't know what to make of it, and neither did I. I felt like I was losing my mind. But as I sat there, staring at the mess in the apartment, I began to piece things together. The drink, the dizziness, the pentagram, the blood. It all pointed to something far more terrifying than I could understand. The police left shortly after, saying they would investigate. But there was no sign of Haley, no sign of a struggle. The only clue was the tranquilizer in my system and the pentagram on the wall. The officer who had spoken to me said they would keep looking, but I could tell they didn't know where to start. I had no idea where to start either. The next few days were a blur. I kept searching for Haley, calling her phone over and over, but there was nothing. Her social media was gone. Her accounts had been deleted, and her phone number was disconnected. It was like she had vanished into thin air. I spent hours online, looking for any trace of her, but found nothing. It was as if she had never existed. I even went to places we used to go, hoping for some sign of her, but there was nothing. Just an empty world with no answers. It felt like I was losing my mind. I kept thinking about the pentagram, the bloodstains, the way she had looked at me that night. I couldn't escape the feeling that she was still out there, somewhere, watching me, waiting. Days turned into weeks, and the search for Haley went cold. But the memories of that night haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't safe, that I never would be again. I never spoke to Haley again. She was gone. The apartment was a wreck. The pentagram remained on the wall, a silent reminder of the worst night of my life. And as the months passed, I never stopped feeling that something was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return. The days turned into weeks, and the search for Haley went cold. But the memories of that night haunted me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't safe, that I never would be again. I never spoke to Haley again. She was gone. The apartment was a wreck. The pentagram remained on the wall, a silent reminder of the worst night of my life. And as the months passed, I never stopped feeling that something was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to return. Now, every time I close my eyes, I see her face, and I hear that haunting melody she left behind. Is she still out there, watching, waiting for me to make the next mistake? Or is there something much darker at play, something far beyond my understanding? I don't know the answers. But if you think you've had a brush with something sinister, or if you've ever experienced a moment where you felt like you were being watched, don't keep it to yourself. Share your story with me in the comments below. And if you want to hear more terrifying tales, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. You never know when the next story will be about you. Stay safe out there, and remember, not everything you see is what it seems.